Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your group. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jonathan Sherman. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work with individuals, couples, and families, helping them create truly great relationships in their marriages and their parenting and with their own selves. And one of the most common things I deal with is mental health. And I've been treating mental health and relationship issues for 25 years now in a lot of different settings. And currently I work in private practice and I do a lot of speaking and training as well here in groups like this, large groups, small groups, professional trainings and whatnot. So that's my background in brief. Tonight, as we're talking about mindful mood mastery, especially having good mental health while we're in isolation during this pandemic, it is an interesting time for a lot of people. And so Jack had told me that she had asked some questions, got some feedback from people at the very beginning of this in preparation. So definitely ask questions as you go. As we go, if you have questions, I'm happy to have this be more of a Q&A as I'm presenting ideas. I'd love to have your real-time feedback. Let me know what's resonating for you, and also if there's things that you'd like more information on, I can go back and address that further in the time that we have. And then, so let me just go over some of the things. Jack did a little bit of a how are you doing survey ahead of time, and there was these were some of the concerns that were brought up and questions. And so and I'll just kind of answer them as we go, and then I'll go into some additional material as well. Some people had expressed struggling working from home because it made them sad. Maybe that sadness, I'm not sure what that sadness was for, if someone wants to describe further, but just, just the isolation, just loss of the routine, the loss of being connected with people. A lot of people have they count on their work life for a lot of their social interaction. And so it's a big change for a lot of people. Some people had wanted us to pray that they would have courage to interact with people, especially when it's all over. For some people, some people are missing that social connection. Other people are relieved to not have as much social connection, actually. So it can be a very mixed bag of what people are experiencing, depending on maybe how extroverted or introverted you are, how socially comfortable you are or socially anxious you are. Some people's self-confidence is down when there's a lot of things that affect how we do. And one of the things is what we do. How busy are we? How productive are we? How active are we? One thing that comes up a lot in mental health discussions is our self-esteem. And usually self-esteem and self-worth, these two words are usually described together synonymously. However, I've noticed over the years that they're really two different but related things. Self-esteem comes from doing, and self-worth comes from being. So on the doing side of things with our self-esteem, the more we accomplish, the more we achieve, the more we overcome, our self-esteem increases. But when all of a sudden, because of maybe you've lost a job, or maybe you're not as productive at school because you're doing online classes and it's just not a structure that works for you, and so your productivity may have gone down. Well, depending on how much we're achieving or not achieving, doing or not doing, it's going to affect our sense of self-esteem. Now, this is going to be important here in a minute, because on the one hand, we have our self-esteem based in doing. Over here, we have our self-worth based in being. Since most people put these two together, if we're not able to do or accomplish as much, our confidence goes down and our esteem goes down. And if we're not clear what our worth is, then our worth is going to be tied into what we're able to do or not do. This is important. Our state of being, our sense of worth, we actually can't change. Whereas esteem can raise and lower, our worth just is. It's just inherent to who we are as human beings. And unfortunately, a lot of people really don't get their worth. They don't know how to identify it. They don't really believe it. Most people, their worth is based in, like I said, their esteem and what they're able to do or not do. And so one way to kind of think about your self-worth is imagine a diamond. A diamond has worth not because of what it does. There's nothing a diamond can do to be more diamond. And it can't become less a diamond. You might be able to cut it in size, but it doesn't change the nature of it. It is inherently diamond. And so let's say I have a big honking ring here, this beautiful diamond ring on my finger, and there's nothing I can do about its worth other than appreciate it, value it, protect it, see it for what it is. But if I'm working out in the garden and it falls off and gets buried in the dirt, the diamond doesn't lose any of its worth. The worth is still inherently within it. It doesn't change one bit or one bit more or less. It stays diamond. And so this is important when it comes to our own self-worth, especially like from a spiritual context, which I'm speaking to a spiritual group. This is going to be recorded later, and so not everybody is going to share the same faith that we have. So with this group I'm speaking to, one of the things that they're taught at a young age is that I am a child of God. I am is a statement of being. It is not a statement of doing. You can't do child of God. You just are. And in that sense of being, you have worth by your very nature, just as a diamond has a worth by its very nature. And so we have to be really clear with where our confidence ultimately comes from. Does our confidence only come from what we do? If it does, then our esteem will go up and down, our confidence will go up and down based on what we accomplish or don't accomplish. Or is our worth fully established in who we are? It's amazing. I work with a lot of members of our faith who have believed their whole lives that I am a child of God, and yet they don't talk to themselves that way. They don't really believe it, and they don't really treat themselves with the kindness or the compassion or the dignity or the respect that such a being deserves. This is an important aspect here. So while your esteem may be challenged by what you're able to do or not do, it's really important that you anchor yourself in your worth, who you are. And if you're not clear with that, and a lot of people aren't, they believe they're a child of God, but they don't really believe it. And they don't talk to themselves well or kindly or gently. And that needs to be corrected. It's going to be an important part of taking care of your mental health, regardless of your spiritual beliefs or whether they're religious or otherwise. This is a core thing that's important whether I'm talking to religious people or not, to be really clear with who they are and not just what they do. Now, some of you may be fans, I am, of the movie Elf, right, with Will Ferrell. One of my favorite examples of this is he's in his father's office, his father who's just found out that he has this adult elf child that he didn't know that he had. And the dad is a very productive, successful businessman, and it's all about doing and appearance and getting things done, and very success driven in action. And then his phone rings, and Buddy the elf launches across his desk, grabs the phone right in front of his dad, and says, "Hi, I'm Buddy the elf. What's your favorite color?" And besides being a really funny scene, what's great about that scene is Buddy the elf is coming from this childlike place. As Jesus said, "Become me as little children." He's asking a question of being, not doing. He wants to know who the caller is. What are they about? What's their essence? When you're kids, you want to know what's your favorite food, what's your favorite color. No one cares about what you do. They want to know who you are. And somewhere between being kids and becoming adults, we forgot to stay focused on our essence of who we are. Now, I have nothing wrong with, there's no problem with doing and the esteem side of things. I think it's a lovely part of our lives. I believe in pursuing goals and overcoming challenges and achieving things. I have a lot of ambitions. Some I've succeeded at, some I haven't. But having that counterbalance so that when our esteem lowers or confidence lowers, we have a solid anchor point, but we know who we are. Now, if you struggle with that, that's okay. A lot of people do. But it's a good time to use this time as a time of reflection. A lot of times people are just reacting to everything that's going on. And there's a lot of that's going on right now with this pandemic. There's a lot that is unknown. Some people are overblowing things. Some people are underblowing things. People aren't taking things seriously enough. Maybe people are taking things too serious. Sometimes we don't know if we're taking things too serious or not too serious. So there's a lot of unknown variables here. And so with that unknown comes a lot of questions and a lot of fear and a lot of trepidation. And so when we're in a fearful state, we tend to react. And this is an important time where we can pause for a moment because we're kind of forced to pause. Our life has changed in our society right now because of the situation that's happening. this is an opportunity to pause and reflect. And instead of react, respond and think about, how am I going to do things differently? And maybe give myself a chance in this quieter time to really think about, what is my worth and who am I? And if a lot of people have a really poor self-concept of their worth, and if you are a person of faith, I would encourage you, whether it's our faith or somebody else's faith, go really core to your faith and figure out who you really are, and stop believing your negative self-talk or whatever program you have in your head, whatever you've picked up along the way, whatever society has told you negatively about yourself. And I'll encourage you to use this time to really meditate and ponder and really consider, what is the worth of either my soul, of my body, of the very nature that I'm a human being, that I have life in this vast universe, when so many scientists are doing wonderful work exploring the universe, looking for any sign of life. They would be astounded and grateful to find bacteria on the moon or Mars. We're so excited to find just that level of life. And here you are teeming in this amazing body that you're in, where there's so much life just in this one body. So much life. Get this, you may not know this, but in your physical body, I don't care what shape your body's in, how beautiful or ugly you think you are or whatever, because the truth is none of that matters. Side note, that in this body that you're in right now, each one of you, me, have over 50 trillion cells in the human body. Think of that, 50 trillion. That's a number we can't comprehend. 50 trillion cells right now are working in your body in a ridiculously high level of harmony, one with the other, to provide life to you. There is so much worth inherent in that. When we are excited to find bacteria on another planet, our planet is teeming with ridiculous quantities of gorgeous, amazing, astounding life. To pause and reflect on that. Religious or atheist, that's a beautiful thing to consider. And so that is who you are. And there's nothing you can do to increase or decrease the value of those cells and this life. It's an important thing to internalize from a scientific perspective, from a spiritual perspective. It has great value. So I'm going to pause here for just a minute. Jack, how are we doing? Any questions?
Not so far. I think you're doing great.
Okay, we're good.
If anyone has any questions, those who joined, anyone who has questions, you can message me privately in the chat and I'll anonymously ask them to him.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. This is a little bit of a different setting for me. I'm really enjoying it, actually, and I appreciate everybody who's tuned in. It's a different setting because normally I'm standing in front of a group of 50 to 100 people at a time, and I'm getting all the feedback for the visual cues and the verbal cues and whatnot. And so if something's not working, let me know. But so far, so good. We're just going to keep moving. So anyway, so those are some of the concerns there. To move forward, someone suggested had the question of just mental health in general, which we'll just talk about some general mental health things and how to have peace and general well-being. Some of what I've already described with that important distinction between self-worth and self-esteem is going to be kind of a foundational aspect of managing whatever issue of specific mental health, peace and general well-being we're looking at. Some questions that were asked is, how do I not blame myself for others' mental illness or take it upon me? That's a great question. I see that all the time. Because there's a balance that we need to find, right? We are our brother's keeper. We are responsible for helping one another, I hope. Otherwise, why be social creatures, right? People who don't care are sociopaths, right? We don't want to be that. So how do I not blame myself for others' mental illness? One, we have to be really clear, what can I do? What can't I do? What is mine? What is not mine? So obviously, if you're going around poking people in the eye and calling them terrible names, then you have some responsibility for their physical and mental health issues, okay? But you can't take on responsibility for someone else's mental health issues any more than you can take on responsibility if somebody has the flu or somebody has leukemia or diabetes or cancer. One of the best ways to understand mental illness and mental health is to think about it as just another physical health issue. right? We oftentimes talk about, we got our physical health and our mental health like it's somehow separate. It's just up in here, right? And this is where a lot of people get stigmatized around their mental health, whether it's depression, anxiety, or any number of other mental health issues, is they or others will think, well, it's just up in my head. I just need to get over it. And I'll tell people it is just up in your head. That's exactly where it is, because that's where your brain resides, right? And your brain is a physical part of your body. Your brain is every bit as physical as your kneecaps are, as your eyeballs are, as your heart is, as your pinky toe is. Your brain is every bit as much a physical part of your body. Mental health is physical health. The brain is made up of neural tissue. The brain is going, I told you how many cells are in the body. Well, there's over 100 trillion electrical connections going on in a massive tissue the size of both of your fists up in your head. 100 trillion electrical connections. Electricity is physical. Brain chemistry is physical. The tissue is physical. There is nothing about mental health that is not physical. We need to start to treat mental health effectively. We need to treat it the way it needs to be treated. We need to understand it the way it needs to be understood. Mental health is physical health. So don't blame yourself for somebody else's physical or mental health issue, okay? Sometimes we have mental health issues because sometimes we just have them, right? I mean, why does one person have diabetes, another one doesn't? Why does one person have cancer and another doesn't? Why does one person catch the flu and another one doesn't? Sometimes there are factors that contribute to that, but sometimes people just get sick because they get sick. Now, of course, there are other things that can precipitate a mental health issue, such as a trauma or a really difficult situation or a hard time, a major change of circumstance, like a lot of people are having now with the change of routine and the loss of maybe income or time with friends or any number of other issues that are going on, maybe going through a grief reaction to this loss of routine and this change of circumstances. That can trigger depression or stress or anxiety, anger, reactivity, all kinds of things. So first of all, just don't blame yourself for others' mental illnesses, okay? If you are, just stop it. It doesn't mean that you don't care. You just don't take responsibility for it. If you're not like directly causing it, like calling people stupid and booger heads, then, if we're not doing that, you're probably not causing it. You can't take control of that.
And we just had one question too.
Yes, please.
How do you not push someone's self-esteem down for having mental health?
Great question. How do you not push someone's self-esteem down for having mental health issues? One is start of responding to mental health as I'm doing. This is the way I'm just talking about it is I'm normalizing mental health issues. I've just normalized it as a physical health issue. Nobody stigmatizes diabetes, do they these days? Does anybody stigmatize someone who has cancer or has the flu? Part of it is we have to see it for what it actually is, that we follow the research. Honestly, I'll tell you, the hardest problem I have in treating mental health issues is not treating the issue. Treating depression, I know how to treat that all day long. Treating anxiety, I know what to do to help anxiety. That's not the issue. The hardest part of my job is getting past this big, stupid, idiotic, long-standing stigma around mental health issues. And so if we can enlist people like you here today, enlist people like you to say, you know what, we're gonna normalize mental health as just another part of human health. And if someone is struggling with it, then I ask, how can I help? And this other question of how do I not take it upon me is that you're not causing the person's mental health issues. You can help them, but you also have to know what you can't do to help. So if example, if I had what's an illness, if I had cancer or something like that, I could ask for your help, but there's probably not a lot you could do to help me, is there? Most of you, any of you doctors. So of course you would say, Jonathan, I'd love to help you. I'll be happy to bring you over some soup or help pick up some of the slack now that you're sick. But sounds like you need to go to a doctor, right? You're not going to try to attempt any treatment. So the best you can do is offer emotional support, let them know that you care, see if there's ways that you can help. But the person, if you're dealing with depression and anxiety, for example, the two most common mental health issues, you should be getting professional help. These aren't illnesses that just self-treat. Sure, I mean, if you have a minor anxiety or a minor depression, we all have those. Everyone has depression and anxiety. So sometimes you just might be in the blues or down in the dumps or stressed and overworked or whatnot. So yeah, maybe just letting time pass or talking to a friend or whatnot, or maybe enough to help that pass. That's fine for mild depressions and anxieties. But if you're chronically depressed and anxious and it's pretty moderate to severe, these aren't things that self-treat. Okay. Cancer doesn't self-treat. Most illnesses don't self-treat. They need to be treated. So, you know, we'll talk about that treatment, some of those treatment options in a little bit here. So yeah, best way to not push down somebody's esteem around that is talk to them like it's a normal thing. You know, one of the most common phrases out of my mouth, I don't even realize I'm saying it because it's just so normal to me, is when someone tells me about how crazy they're feeling or how whacked out things are going or how messed up their thoughts are. I'm just listening and I'm just like, well, of course you feel that way. Who wouldn't? Of course you feel that way. Who wouldn't? That both normalizes their experience as opposed to what's wrong with me. It's like, well, gosh, of course you feel that way. That's normal. Who wouldn't validates, you're human. We suffer in this world. Okay. This life is full of suffering. People always talk about, especially in our faith, right? Being more Christ-like. Um, wrap your head around this one, folks. We think about being Christ-like as just being, of course, more loving and kind and nurturing and patient and non-judgmental. Those are all wonderful traits. Christ was a man of sorrow, well acquainted with grief. Can any of you relate to that? Are you a person of sorrow at times, well acquainted with grief? That, my friends, makes you Christ-like. And bear in mind, he came to this earth to not be Christ-like. He came to this earth to be human-like, to relate to us, to connect with us in our pain, not in our glory. He came to be here with us in our pain. So when someone else is in their pain, sorrow with them. Mourn with those that mourn. The word compassion comes from the Latin root word compati, which means to suffer with. Suffering is an experience that none of us want to go through, and we all hate. And yet, it is how we connect as human beings. To suffer with one another is the nature and essence of compassion. And so when someone has a mental health issue, it's okay if you don't understand it. If you can't relate to it because you haven't gone through it, that's okay. I can't relate to childbirth. I've never nursed any of my 4 children. I can't relate to it. I'll never understand what it's like to be a woman and have a woman's body and what goes through a woman's body. But I can listen and I can believe my wife when she tells me what it's like for her. And I can respond to it with compassion and patience. And just to clarify, I'm not comparing being a woman with being mentally ill. I realize my analogies. Maybe I could get myself in a lot of trouble there. Trust me, that's not me. But Jack knows me, knows that I probably put my foot in my mouth every now and then. But the point being is that there are things that some of us we can't relate to. And if you haven't dealt with a crippling depression or a crippling anxiety, there's no way for you to understand what that's like. And it's okay to not be able to understand it. Just believe that the person is struggling. Believe that it's real for them. And what may be so easy for you to just do yourself is the hardest thing in the world for that person to do. So I have ADHD, full-blown king lord of the ADHD human beings on the planet. And what is very easy for someone who's a linear focused thinker to be able to do in 5 minutes can take me 5 hours or 5 months to get around to. It's been a real struggle my whole life, and I've had to really learn a lot of tricks and tips and strategies and techniques to manage around the downsides of the ADHD. And so it's the same thing with depression and anxiety, something that may be very easy for a non-depressed. Like the thing that really bothers people a lot, that really pushes their esteem down, is when someone's one of the hallmarks of depression, right, is a lack of motivation, loss of energy, loss of desire to do anything. And then somebody says, well, you just need to get out and exercise. Okay, that is a great answer, because exercise can help with the endorphins, which can help you feel better. The problem is, how do you get up and get out and exercise if you can't get up? And if you have no motivation and you have no drive to move? Just honestly getting out of bed may be akin to running a marathon for the person who's chronically depressed. So if someone says they're really struggling with doing something, don't just jump to the thought that, well, they're just being lazy, or they don't care, or they're just not trying hard enough, or they just need to have more faith, or they just need to pray harder, or they just need to try harder. Assume that maybe that person knows their experience better than you do, and just believe them. And if you don't know what to do, that's okay. Get educated. One of the best things you can do to help people is become knowledgeable. This is a good example. Some of you are here listening because you're dealing with these very things I'm talking about. Some of you are here because you're wanting to gain a better understanding. Both are great reasons to be here. So the other question here, I hope that answered your question to some extent. The other question, how do you not take it upon someone else's mental take it upon you, is you have to realize that their behavior, someone who has a mental health issue, they may not be functioning well. Besides suffering the horrible feelings that they're feeling, they may not be acting well, right? Things may be slipping in their lives, right? And things aren't getting done. And it may look like they're being lazy. They may certainly, a common symptom of depression and anxiety is increased irritability, right? So they may be more grumpy or snappy. That's kind of hard to not take personal, right? Or to take it upon you, or feel like you have a responsibility to solve it. You just have to remember that one thing to look up, if you can't, excuse me, if you can remember, look this up if you haven't heard it before, is look up the Serenity Prayer. I don't have it memorized completely off the top of my head, but if you're familiar with AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, it's the classic prayer that they've used for years. And it's something along the lines of, God grant me the serenity to change the things I can change, and the serenity to accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's an important thing to know what you can and can't do. And if you don't know, talk it over with a friend or a loved one or a counselor, or someone who can help you sort out what is yours to manage and what is not yours to manage. Because otherwise we're going to end up taking on way too much, So anyway, great. Let's see what our next question is. I feel like if they're lonely, it's because I'm not reaching out enough, right? Again, that's part of that, taking that responsibility. They may be lonely, and you may or may not be reaching out enough. I don't know, but a lot of people, especially in our faith, are motivated by guilt a lot, constantly feeling like they're not doing enough. There's a kind of a cliche or classic experience. I mean, you can ask a Catholic or a Jew who's better at being driven by guilt, right? And Mormons, I think, are right up there with being driven by guilt a lot as a motivating force. I don't think it's a good force to be motivated by. Ask yourself, if you're, you have to know what you can and can't do. And sometimes you're doing enough doesn't mean that you're doing the best that could possibly be done. Sometimes we can just do what we can do. There's no way, I serve a lot of people, and there's no way I'll ever do enough to serve everyone who needs serving. Okay, and I do a lot, and it'll just never be enough. But I don't feel bad about that, because I know that I'm doing what I can do, and I might not be doing what you can do. Some of you might be able to do more than I can do, or other people don't do as much as I can do. I'm not a big fan of being driven by guilt, and I'm really not a fan of being driven by comparing myself to others. I'm really good at some stuff. I mean, awesome at it. Other things, guys, I completely suck at. And I'm 51. I've made peace with that. A lot of people haven't made peace with that. The things that they're awesome at, they don't fully enjoy because they could be better, and it's not good enough fully, and someone else is better at it. So yeah, I'm good at this, but it's like the classic time when somebody will give you a compliment, or somebody will give somebody else a compliment. You say, well, thanks, bud, or no, it's really not that. And they'll downplay the compliment. But then the negative things about themselves, the stuff they suck at, they'll exaggerate them and make them bigger. I'm not a fan of either one. Take a moment and think about what you're good at, and what you're enough at, and what you like, what you enjoy. Some things you're actually pretty awesome at. Stop and give yourself some credit and listen to people. Please listen to people when they give you compliments. The vast majority of people out there when they're giving compliments are only giving them because they're intelligent people who are sincere. They see something and they want to share it with you. Don't bat away another compliment the rest of your life. Please take it in. Enjoy it. Enjoy, to bring joy in. Enjoy the compliment. Savor it like a good meal. Really enjoy a good compliment. And then the things that you're hard on yourself, ease up. I'm all for self-examination. There's plenty of mistakes I've made. Plenty of mistakes you're going to make and have made. But you need to ease up a little bit and remember, how do you respond to those mistakes? It says a lot about how happy or sad you're going to be. So when you screw up, do you beat yourself up? A lot of people say this, right? You'll hear this a lot from people. Oh, I beat myself up all the time. I'm my own worst enemy. I'm so hard on myself. I want you to think about someone that you care about and love. And think about all the mistakes they've made. They've all made them. Your best friends, your parents, sibling, whoever it is that's important to you, a grandparent. They've all made mistakes. And when they've made mistakes, when have you ever been so hard on them? When have you ever been their worst enemy? On my own, and when have you been their worst critic? There's a reason you don't do that to other people, right? Because it's not kind. It would be abhorrent to you to do that to someone that you cared for. Because it's not okay to treat others that way. What I submit to you tonight is that you are just another other. You're not a special case. You don't get to be compassionate to others and harsh to yourself. That doesn't work. That's called hypocrisy. Saying one thing, doing another. If you're going to project kindness to others, and rightfully so, because people deserve that. Well, you're a people too. Bad grammar, good point. You're just another other, and you're a people too. So when you suck at things, and I know you all do, I do. When you suck at things, look at yourself in the mirror. Smile patiently and compassionately. Kindness in your eyes. Say, you're going to get it. Yeah, you really screwed that one up. But you're a good guy. You're a good gal. You're going to figure this out. It's okay. We got this. It's okay. And then just learn from it and do better. Imagine the impact that would have on your depression, on your anxiety, on your sense of self. It's amazing to me how kind people are to others and how cruel, horribly cruel they are to themselves. It's a very unintentional, I mentioned the word hypocrisy, it's a very unintentional hypocrisy. Most people I work with and know, I'm sure all of you here, aren't hypocrites by nature. I mean, yeah, none of us are perfect and we're all inconsistent with things. That doesn't make us hypocrites, okay? It just means that we're human and we're inconsistent with things at times. But this is a very unintentional and damaging hypocrisy, because it gives us a place where we're not judging others, but we're harsh judges on ourselves. Okay, I'll just encourage you, please, if you get nothing else out of tonight, you want to really help your mental health, be gentle with yourself. And notice next time you're brushing your teeth, looking in the mirror, look deep in your own eyes. Look at how much harshness is in there, or look how much kindness is in there. And if there's harshness, take a deep breath, look in your eyes, do a little tiny smile in the corner of your mouth, and just look. That's just a person. It's just a human being. It's just a fellow sufferer in this world who desperately needs and deserves compassion. That's who's looking back at you. Please don't make yourself an exception anymore, where others deserve kindness and you deserve cruelty. It's not okay. It's just not. Okay? All right. So that was kind of our, yes.
we just got one question.
Great.
So how do you get support from someone who also needs support? So like if you've been supporting them and you feel like it's your turn, kind of like how do you get the support you need if someone you're waiting for that support from also needs a lot of support? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And what I would say is don't wait, just ask. A lot of people have a hard time asking for what they want, and they sit there and wait for it and they expect it, and then they're hurt when it doesn't come back. And to say, you know, I really need this. Can you help me with this? That's so simple. It's so hard for a lot of people to do. But don't wait for what you want. That's a common but hard way to go through life. If you need help, ask for it. Understanding that you're asking, you can't require someone else to help you. So you might, and there are people out there who aren't really good at reciprocating, okay? You might really give from the best part of your heart to somebody else. And the truth is, some people just might not reciprocate it. Either one, because they're too self-absorbed, because maybe they're just a selfish person, or maybe they're just too overwhelmed and they know they should, but they just can't. Whatever reason, ask but don't expect. And then this is kind of an important thing that bleeds out into other issues in life, is that you kind of at some point have to be making good decisions about who is in your inner circle. There's a lot of people you can love, but not everybody is healthy, okay? And not everybody can return a reciprocal relationship, right? And while it's good to love and serve people and be Christ-like and compassionate, at the same time, Jesus also said, don't cast your pearls before swine. If you need help and you need compassion, understanding, that part of you, that's the pearl, the vulnerable, beautiful part that needs support. Swine isn't necessarily an insult. It certainly doesn't sound like a compliment, but pigs don't know pigs aren't jewelers. They don't know what to do with a beautiful pearl. Right? And not everybody knows how to nurture and support back. So ask directly for what you want. Say, I need this. Will you help me with this? And if they respond, then that'll tell you something about the kind of person that you're letting into your life. And if they don't, or they can't ever reciprocate well, then that'll also tell you that maybe you exit those people out of your life more and more.
What if you are dating or married to that person?
Well, if you're dating and it's continually that way, then just say goodbye. That's the beauty of dating. You're not obligated. It's amazing. Well, but we've been through so much together. Well, if it's not a healthy relationship, I don't care what you've been through. Okay. I can't speak to the specific dating situations. There's so many variations, right? Some people will change, but I do always tell people on the dating side of things, make sure you're dating a partner, not a project. Yeah, but he or she has so much potential. It makes me want to gag, people. The person that you're dating now is how they will be when they're married, when you're married to them, but more so. So if you're dating someone and it's not healthy and it's not reciprocal and they're not willing to work with you on things and improve, it's okay if people have problems, but are they improving? Are you guys growing together as a couple on a steady, consistent basis? Or is it always the same thing over and over and over again? Bye-bye. Bye-bye. That's the simple answer. It's not always the answer people want, because people want people to be different than they are. Maya Angelou, this famous poet and wonderful empowerer of people in general and women specifically, she said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Too often we see how somebody is and we just keep making excuses for their bad behavior. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what the question is going now. If on the dating scene, you're not obligated to who you're dating, people. If it's not a healthy relationship, the point of dating is like trying on clothes, right? You go shopping, you're not obligated to try to buy every shirt you try on. If it doesn't fit, you go put it back on the rack, right? Now, this may be a little bit more heart-wrenching to break up with someone and put it back on the rack than putting clothes on the rack, but the point is still the same. Now, what if that person is your spouse, was this other part of that question? Well, that's a whole nother story, right? Because we are obligated, we have made commitments. And now, of course, I'm very pro-marriage. My website is marriageenvy.com. I help people turn around really crappy situations into really happy ones. My focus is greatness in relationships. My goal is not to patch together crummy marriages and have them limp along as long as possible. I want people to really help them know that they can transform their marriage into something beautiful and wonderful. And that's one of my joys in life. It's one of my life's work. And there's a lot of wonderful stories in the past 25 years of families and marriages that have been saved because they took action and they showed up in my office or somebody's office like me. So if you have this problem in your marriage, go talk to that person, tell them what they want and what they need, and work it out with each other. If you can't work it out with each other, that's okay. Go enlist somebody like me who can help you do what you don't know how to do, right? And sometimes people always say, well, what if my partner won't come with me? Well, then you come. One person, they say, well, it takes two to tango. It takes one to tango. That's the math of relationship work. About 1/4 of my couples clients are actually just one person coming in, even though that through that one person, we're working on shifting the nature of the relationship. Of course, I prefer and they prefer if we can have both partners there, right? So of course I want this to work. In most marriage situations, we can turn around. There are some where things are just too toxic or dangerous, or heaven forbid, where there's domestic violence or child abuse going on in the home, or uncontrolled substance abuse that isn't being treated and won't get treated, things like that. There are definitely deal breakers where there is no other option but leaving the relationship. And whatnot. But if it's something where there's just a lack of reciprocity, or we're having a lot of conflicts that aren't violent or aren't abusive, then there's a lot of things that we can do in couples counseling to help that couple. And one other thought there is, I'll put that out there for everyone, is for those of you who are dating, if you, I'll tell you what my one professional wish is. If a genie were to pop down today, the personal wish would be, of course, $1 million bucks. But the professional wish would be that everyone did premarital and early marital counseling. If there was one thing I could pick that would knock out 95% of the problems that I see in marriages, and I see a lot of problems in marriages, as you can well imagine, that then trickle into the family and trickle into the kids and affects everybody's mental health one way or the other. If I had one thing I could recommend, premarital and early marital counseling is non-optional. When I'm working with singles, and I work with a lot of singles in the dating scene, and they say, well, what if my partner won't come with me to premarital counseling? What should I say? What should I do? Bye. It's amazing how much we expect in every other area of our life when it comes to training and education and intelligence that we don't apply to the single most important relationship of our lives. So building a building, building a temple, building a church, before any work is done, before one shovelful of dirt is dug, the blueprints are completely drawn out and they are highly detailed, right? Before the football team shows up to play the game, they've practiced and trained for months, learning the best skills, right? Companies require that before they hire you, if you're doing a professional job, they require that you get an education first, right? That you get training, that you become certified before they're going to hire you, right? And if they do hire you, there's still ongoing training. Every aspect of our lives requires training and education to have greatness, and learning the best skills from the best minds out there in any field, in any endeavor, except the single most important relationship of our lives that we will bring other living beings into. We make our decisions based on feelings. Think about that for a minute. Think about, some of you are in college. Think about if you were to just drop out of college right now and think about the ideal job that you'd love to work at, and you just show up there and say, I really want to work here because I love it so much and I want to do this because I really feel like it's important to me. Who would hire you? Anyone? Anybody give you a second thought? No. Because so many of the problems that I see in couples are so preventable. And the best time to prevent them is early on. It's amazing. Those couples who before we met here today, I've been working with this couple now for about 10 sessions. They're back east in Maryland. I do this video stuff with people around the world. Great couple, college kids, and they're preparing to get married, and they're doing it right. They're sending a message to each other that we're gonna learn how to solve problems when our problems are small, so that one, we can knock out a lot of problems before they ever come up. But we're also going to show each other that if problems ever become bigger than we can handle, we've already shown each other that we will go get the help we need when we need it. That they're showing humility and intelligence in how they're approaching their relationships. And all this relationship discussion has everything to do with mental health. There will be nothing more stressful, depressing, and anxiety provoking than marriage and family life. There's also some of the greatest sources of joy, right? And happiness and fulfillment and meaning. Those are the parts that we usually hear about before we get married. We don't hear about all the depression, anxiety, and stress that's going to come in a marriage and family setting. It would make sense to learn how to deal with conflict really well, how to bring two lives together in a very intelligent strategy. One of the things I help couples go through is what I call the Our Way plan. Go through 12 areas: purpose, vision, and mission, rules and roles, communication, conflict resolution, love languages, an operator's manual, time together, time apart, sex and intimacy, money and finances, parenting and discipline, extended family and friends, religion and spirituality, maintenance and enhancement, and mentoring and mastery. And we develop a plan where the two are united on that as they go into marriage. Imagine how many conflicts are stopped because our expectations are aligned really well with each other. And imagine that not happening, which most couples don't do that. Most couples do not do that. Imagine the impact of all those conflicts and unmet expectations and irritations, annoyances. Imagine decades of that. Imagine the impact that has on mental health. And it's huge. It's huge. So much so that couples who are divorced, compared to those who are married and married well, those people on average who are married well live an average 7 years longer. Mental health affects our physical health and our longevity. So one of the best ways to, as I said earlier, use this time as a point of self-reflection where you're isolated more. Use it as a time not to react to what's going wrong. Use it as a time to, I have a unique opportunity here to really reflect on not just what's going on here, but how am I going to move forward in the future? Because mental health isn't about just responding to what's going on now. A lot of you are, I know, in college or single. Well, I guess you're all single, right? Because this is a single adults world. Gotcha. Right. And so one of the best ways to take care of our mental health is not just to respond to what's going on now, is to prepare for down the road. Okay. So if you'll take it to heart, what I just gave you was worth more than gold. If you'll do premarital and early marital counseling, you will save yourself and your children so much agony, and you will bring so much added and enhanced happiness. And I don't care whether you do that with me or someone else. I'm not trying to sell anything here tonight other than sell intelligence and sell ideas. I want to get that into your head. Okay. So anyway, thank you. A great question. I have to say, as your questions come out, I answer a lot more than just the immediate question because everything's related to everything, right? So anyway, thank you for your questions. They're all very helpful. If they're anxious because I'm not helping enough, I think I kind of talked about that with the other one. If someone else is anxious because they're anxious, if you can help them, offer to help, but you can't take responsibility for that, okay? If they're depressed, it's because I'm not being a good friend, a lot of those questions like that. Another question was, I'm struggling being alone with my family. I struggle opening up to them because they haven't taken me seriously in the past, so I don't share what is going on with my life, depression, anxiety with them, which leaves me keeping everything inside. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. It's certainly not uncommon. And this is where we have to sometimes create extended families, right? Through friends, through social supports, through counselors, through whatever, to create other types of supports. Um, and sometimes, going out and getting help. There's been plenty of times where I've worked with somebody where they were in that same situation, and I've asked if they'd have their family come in with, if they have a parent or a sibling come into their session with them. And they were a little nervous at first, but part of my job is to help people do what they don't know how to do, right? So I act as a bridge a lot between families where they don't know how to communicate or don't know how to take things seriously. Not every family can do that. Not every family will, but a lot of families are struggling, not because there's anything inherently wrong with any of the family members. It's because they just don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to approach each other. They don't know how to work around an old family dynamic or an entrenched conflict pattern. They just don't know how to get around that, right? And so people do keep a lot of things inside. And so if you can't share with your family, maybe you never can. Some families it's just the way they are. But some families will open up more through those opportunities, like through a counselor. Um, or it just may be that you just have to not expect that from them. So, but I don't mean that in a negative way. It's kind of like the well's empty, you don't keep going to it for water. If someone doesn't know how to validate you, you stop going to them for validation. But the need for water and the need for validation is still there. So it's important to go seek out healthy sources of that understanding and validation. So you're not holding all that inside. If you're dealing with depression and anxiety, like I said earlier, these things don't self-treat. Go get help, right? Gain knowledge, like in a setting like this. Go read books. Watch positive, helpful, knowledgeable YouTube videos on the subject. Reach out to online. There's wonderful online support groups all throughout Facebook and other places. Support groups where people can sit there and talk about what's going on. There's online counseling. There's free things and paid things, all kinds of things out there. But definitely don't keep everything inside. That's a very common thing that a lot of people do. And again, one of the problems I have in treating mental health issues is not the mental health issue. It's the stigmas around it and the fear of being vulnerable. And it's a hard thing to be vulnerable. Like I said earlier, we don't want to cast pearls before swine, but we want to find the jewelers out there who can really appreciate the vulnerable things that you're struggling with. So I know we're almost at the hour point, not of when we started, but at least on the top of the hour. Jack, how are we doing? You want to get a little survey from people and see if they want to keep going or if we want to wrap it up here? I'm fine to keep going a little longer.
If you're good to keep going, people can just leave whenever they want. So if you're good to keep going, we can go all night. Woo!
3 a.m. We got
3 a.m.
more hours. Okay. We're going to cover everything. Yeah. All right.
But for real, you can go for as long as you want and people can leave whenever they want to. So
Okay. Sounds good. We'll probably maybe go for, I don't know, let's see what the next 15 minutes takes us to. And then if we want to keep going another 15, we can go to 8:30 or we'll just see if 8:15 looks good.
okay.
Okay. All right. If anybody has more questions, feel free to throw them out there or if I didn't quite answer your question, you're welcome to raise your hand again, so to speak. So, okay. I think we kind of touched on all this basically. The loss of routine and change and the unknown can really trigger the grief and loss experience. It can leave people compensating too much with TV, food, sleeping, video, games, leave them spinning in their own thoughts mindlessly. That's where I really talked about wanting to really use this time as a place to gain skills, practice, learn new practices, develop mindsets that rather than reacting to what's going on, learning how to act and respond well to what's going on. Okay. So one, get out and move around, right? This may be obvious, like just get out of the house, obviously respecting social distancing, but drive, walk, run, play, go just do something different, get moving. It's important. And get out of yourself, go serve others, go leave cookies for somebody or go, I don't know, look for something you can clean up. When my kids were little, we'd go for walks and I'd always bring a garbage bag with me and I'd walk around and I just pick up garbage along the way. And we'd try to see how much garbage we could pick each time. It's just a small thing, but like, why not go out and make the world a little bit better? And, there's lots of big and small things that you can come up with, lots of ways to do random acts of kindness and things like that. Stay connected, of course, wonderfully. This is a great time. Honestly, this is a weird thing for me to say because the pandemic, nothing's good about that. But I was reflecting on this when I was, when I was in college, your guys' age, everything was, we didn't have cell phones yet. No internet when I was a freshman in college, at least no workable internet. And so if you wanted to call somebody, it was a local call or a really expensive long distance phone call, or you wrote letters. And that's how you stayed connected. So, and video games were very, very minimal. Mostly it was arcade at that point. If you had an Atari 2600, that was pretty boss in your dorm room, but most people didn't even have that. Most people didn't even, when I was a freshman at BYU, most people didn't even have computers. One person on our dorm had an early Mac, the beige Mac. Everyone else had typewriters. Okay, so just bear in mind that as hard as this is for some people, the access that we can do things like this for free is astounding. And so leverage that to stay connected. Friends, support groups, interest groups, counselors, whatever it is that you need, stay connected with people. And we have the opportunity to stay connected, which is great. Mindfulness practice. This is a great opportunity to practice mindfulness. Some of you may be familiar with mindfulness. Some of you may not be. I'll just give you the really super brief version of it. Mindfulness is an ancient spiritual practice most commonly associated with Zen Buddhism. But it's been practiced in every spiritual tradition. It's practiced in philosophy throughout the years. It's practiced in modern science. They teach mindfulness in pain management clinics, for example. They teach mindfulness and meditation practices because by learning to control the mind more, it has such an effect on the body that, let's say if someone has a chronic dependency, like a chronic pain issue, they can have as much as a 50% drop in their dependency on their pain medication just by doing 20 minutes of meditation a day. So mindfulness isn't just a nice positive way of thinking. It has direct physical health benefits. What mindfulness is, it's about filling your mind full of what is right now in this one moment. And when we think about worry and stress, which a lot of people are under, is the vast majority of our worries are not in this one now moment. They exist in the past and in the future. We're worrying about what we didn't do, what we should have done, what we did do, what we didn't do right, what we should have done more, what somebody else did, what they didn't do, what they should have done more. We're worrying about all this past stuff, or we're worried and stressed over all the things that are coming up tomorrow, later on tonight, the next day, 50 years from now. My whole life is before me. All the things I'm going to do wrong, all the things I want to do, but I'm afraid I won't be able to do, all the things I'm going to not do good enough. And we have all of our attention, our mind is in the past, and our mind is in the future. And we anchor them in these two places. And the reason they cause so much anxiety and depression is because we have no control over either past or future. And the worst feeling that you can feel, think about it, the worst feeling that you can feel underneath your worst feelings is the feeling of not having control. Powerlessness is the worst of the worst feelings. And when we put our mind and our attention into a place of the past where we have no power, it feeds depression, it feeds anxiety. And we put our attention and our mind and our focus into the future where we have no power, it feeds anxiety and it feeds depression. And so if we want to have better mental health, we have to bring our mind into where we actually have power and have control. And you may not always feel like you have power and control, but there are some things that you always have some power and control over. And the most simple mindfulness practice is just this. I always have control over that. That in-breath, that out-breath. People are rarely breathing mindfully. They're oftentimes holding tension about the past or the future. They're holding it right in here. And their muscles are constricted and tightened around stress. They feel it in their gut and in their chest up here. And they don't realize it, but their head's bowed a little bit more. They don't realize it, but their face is a little bit more scowly and scrunched up than usual. They don't realize how much of it they're carrying right here in the core of their body and all the tension. And we don't realize that so much of it is tied to the past and so much of it is tied to the future. And we're mindless. And when I take hold of my breath in just that moment, watch what it does to my physical body instead of this. My face, my chin, my neck goes up. It opens up. The passageways open. More oxygen is able to actually enter my lungs because my chest goes back. My shoulders go back and my chest opens up. I can actually pull more oxygen instead of just breathing up here when we're in anxiety. We breathe in depression. We breathe up in here, in our upper part of our chest and our lungs. When we breathe mindfully, it brings our breath down into the bottom part of our lungs, into our diaphragm. We call that belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. If you've looked at a dog or a cat or an infant, when they're breathing and they're sleeping, they're breathing in their belly as their belly rises and falls. That's that peaceful breathing. And it pulls my shoulders back. And as my shoulders go back and I exhale, my shoulders go down. That releases muscular tension. What if I practice more mindful breathing throughout the day? I can start releasing tension mindfully every day. I had one client where he set a timer in his phone so that every 15 minutes it would buzz privately to him. No one else knew why. And he would every day, every 15 minutes, all it usually takes is just good three deep cleansing breaths. And every day for 15 minutes, every 15 minutes, he would cleanse himself and recenter. And his posture would improve, his face would relax. He'd add in what we call a Zen half smile. Just a little gentle smile, not a big doofy grin, but a just gentle little smile. And imagine, if you're at work 8 hours a day, every 15 minutes, it's 32 times he just practiced mindfulness that day, just during work hours. And you have another 8 waking hours during the day. That's 64 times to practice mindfulness. It only takes a few short seconds. Imagine 64 releases of stress, 64 calming moments. Because the only time you can breathe, you can't breathe in the past. You already did it. It's done. You can't breathe again in the past. You can't breathe in the future because as soon as the future comes, it's now the now. The future doesn't really exist other than an interesting construct. Only thing that actually exists in this moment is right now is this one breath. Christ talked about mindfulness when he said, take no thought for the morrow. Sufficient to the day is the evil thereof. And evil in this context, you look up the source word, it means stuff, things. There's enough stress to deal with. And then he added to that and he said, consider the lilies of the field. Stop and smell the roses. You've heard that phrase? Consider the lilies of the field. What a great time to consider the lilies of the field. It's springtime. Go out and look at the flowers and consider them. And he said they don't spin, nor do they toil. Spin like spinning a weaver, okay? They don't spin, they don't toil, and yet they are more finely arrayed than Solomon in his temple. Solomon in his temple was built through lots of doing. Okay, let's go back to that esteem conversation. And he had all these wonderful things that were made by other humans. The temple, the finery, the gold, the decorations. But the lilies, they just are. Their worth is in what they are, not what they do. A lily doesn't do anything but exist mindfully in the moment. The lily does not think about yesterday. The lily does not think about tomorrow. Take no thought for the morrow, Christ said. Brilliant. Now, that doesn't do anything about the past. The only thing you can really do about the past is learn from it. The only time you can learn from it is right now. So as you're reviewing your past and you're beating yourself up over it, first of all, we talked about that. Stop beating yourself up. That doesn't do any good. Does not help. Nobody's motivated by beating them up. I'm going to help you do better by beating you up. Come on, this just doesn't work. So you can't beat yourself up over the past. You need to look at it. If you made mistakes, repent, forgive yourself, learn from it. That's the only thing you can do right now in this now moment is learn from your past. So if you have a repeating thought that's going on, pull out a notepad, write it on your computer. Lessons I've learned from my past. Do more of this. That was awesome. Stop doing these things. That sucks. I don't know how to stop doing this particular thing that sucks. Okay, well now I will make a plan for my future, which is the only thing I can do for the future is plan for it now. I will plan to try to improve that thing. That's all we can do. But once you've learned what you can learn, stop reviewing the past over and over, unless they're happy memories. Knock yourself out on the happy memories. And for the future, like when you're lying in bed at night worrying about the future, like a lot of people do, they just lie awake at night and they can't sleep. Stress, the anxiety, the depression hits hard at night, man. Oh my gosh, it's hard. When that stuff starts coming, take out a notepad. I encourage people to keep a worry journal by the side of their bed, just a spiral notebook, nothing fancy. And when those worries come up, write it out. Worry number 1, blah, 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 blah. Worry number 73, blah, blah, blah. Stress number 48, blah, blah, blah. Then when the worry comes up again, pull out that notepad and say, oh, I already got that one. That's worry number 23. Close the book, set it aside, because right now I'm sleeping. And that is a tomorrow thought. That is nothing I can do about it right now. If I can't do anything about it now, I won't. I will take no thought for the morrow. So I will put that thought in a book, close it, and put it aside. That's what I'll do. Now I'll breathe again. I will listen to calm music. And I will think kind, generous, compassionate thoughts about myself and others. And that's mindfulness practice. There's a lot more to it, but it is that simple. And it's just a practice, emphasis on practice. I don't care how good you are at it. You probably suck at it. Who cares that you're trying? That's good, right? I'm really good at mindfulness practice because, well, I'm 51 years old. I've been practicing on this stuff since I was about 15, 16 years old when I first got tuned into some of this Zen thinking, okay? So yeah, and I teach it every single day. It's very easy. It comes natural to me. So if you suck at it, big deal, okay? Everything that you're good at now you once sucked at. So you just practice it, practice till you get better at it. You'll get better at it. Don't worry too much, okay? I had one guy tell me once he was really worried. He was stressing because he was worried he wasn't meditating correctly. He wasn't breathing right. I said, dude, are you alive? He said, yeah. I said, then you're breathing correctly. The only time you're not breathing correctly is when you're dead, okay? So don't worry if you're not getting it all right. Just think more about it. Just be more mindful, and it's okay. Just fill your mind full of what is. One thing you can fill your mind full of when people say, well, I have nothing to be grateful for. Everything's wrong. Everything's going wrong. I said, no, everything isn't wrong. The things that you're struggling with, I completely validate, and I empathize with you, and we'll work on those things. But right now, I have no idea how many oxygen molecules are surrounding us right now. But every single one of those oxygen molecules is completely 100% right. And there are more of those oxygen molecules around us right now than there are things that are wrong in your life. There are more 50 trillion cells. Talk about count your many blessings, name them one by one. 50 trillion cells in your body that are functioning. Those are all right now. And that's just our immediate surroundings. How many things extending in the next 10 feet are also right and correct? That's a mindfulness practice. Counting your blessings is a mindfulness practice. Okay. So use this opportunity. Oh, body language. I didn't want to talk about this. Is the way of using your body language as a mindfulness practice. as you're out and about, whether you're sitting in your room or whether you're out and about, project a certain presence, right? Choose to go outside with your head just lifted just a little bit. Choose to go outside when you're in public with just your smile, just that Zen half smile, just that calming thing right there. And just walk around with your shoulders back a little bit, breathing calmly, and walk around and notice how you feel. And notice how other people are walking around. Notice how many people they're probably good, decent people just going about their business, but notice how many of them are probably very unintentionally scowly. They're just very serious and getting from place to place. I got things to do and things to do and things to get, and everything's stressful, and I'm worried about my past, and I'm worried about my future, and everything's wrong, and things are getting worse, and just notice how many people are walking around that, and they're carrying that with them every day, everywhere they go. Well, until they, do something fun and happy, and so many scowly people I met are really wonderful, fun people. They just don't realize how scowly they're being. But go out in the world and project a presence. Have fun with it. It's kind of a bit of a game. And I like to notice myself and others. And sometimes I'm able to influence other people and get them projecting that too. I'll catch someone's eye and they'll just see me carrying myself. And it's amazing how many people will actually kind of smile back. And I wasn't necessarily trying to strike up a conversation with them, right? And we can still do this 6 feet apart, okay? So shoulders back, chin up, like I said, the belly breathing like we talked about, okay? Another topic here. Did we have a comment?
No, sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Jeez, woman. All right. Hey, actually, I guess we're at about that 8:20 part. Do we see people engaged? Or is everybody gone?
I do have someone sent a question. I didn't mean to switch my face right there though. That was funny, but so someone had a question about loneliness. They said, how do I combat thoughts of loneliness that I have? They creep up when I'm not working and when I'm not with any friends, and they make me feel like I'm not needed and don't matter. So how to combat those thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm so sorry. Boy, feeling lonely. That's just miserable. I just hate that lonely feeling. It's so hard to feel so disconnected and whatnot. And I would look at going with the idea that we're talking about earlier of how do we respond versus react. The loneliness, first of all, let me be really clear with whatever I'm going to share. I'm not saying you shouldn't feel lonely. The fact is that you do, right? Of course you feel that way. And I would just say, if we were to get creative, how could you ease someone else's loneliness? This idea of get out, right? Get out of yourself. And not that you're being selfish. That's not the message I'm sending. The message of to use your suffering of loneliness. Use that, right? Remember, compassion means to suffer with. And so I promise you, there are so many other people out there that are feeling just as lonely, and they also feel like they're the only ones who feel alone. And so either if there's people you can't reach out to that you don't know, you can get creative, do some random acts of kindness. Go out. I mean, I don't even know what you could do. I mean, there's a billion things, right? The one thing that comes to mind just randomly, and this is just a small thing, is go write 10 notes, meaningful notes. They could be to people you know, or they could be to complete strangers. Just go tape them on someone's windshield. Go around a parking lot and spend an hour writing the notes. Spend an hour out walking around parking lots and taping nice notes to people's windows. Right? That right there is a way to start creating a connection, even if it's with someone you don't even know. Okay, and you may never even meet again. But the loneliness with any of the strong emotions that we're feeling, whether it's depression, anxiety, stress, anger, loneliness, whatever, most of the emotions are there to teach us something. They're an opportunity to learn something. Otherwise, we'll just feel it and it will just use us up and it'll wear us out and we'll gain nothing from it but just misery. Instead, if we can find a way to feel the pain, feel the misery, and figure out, how could I use this emotion? How could I use this as a way to maybe help someone else, and use my pain to remind myself that other people are suffering too, and I'm going to go help them. And I don't know if that's the answer for you. I don't know your circumstances, right? If I knew you and we were talking, we might come up with a completely different and maybe a way better answer. But that's me giving a general or generic response to a very specific question from someone I don't know. So that's just one thought. If anybody else has other thoughts, by the way, feel free to add them in the comments, and then Jack can share them with us, by the way. I'm not the only one who knows things here. In a regular type of setting, we other participants can share ideas more openly than we're doing here. So anyway, I hope that's somewhat helpful. Do you want to keep going, guys, or you want to? Should we call it a day? Or I'm happy to keep talking if you'd like. I love to hear myself talk, apparently. So, what do you think, Jack? We good to keep going, or you want to? Should we wrap it up?
Well, I only see a few videos, but the few videos I see say you can keep going. But if people want to get off, they can get off. Don't feel like you have to stay. Yeah, people say keep going. So
okay, all right. Thanks for the feedback, everyone. I appreciate it.
We do have one person that said, "Are you going to talk about how to find a therapist for you later on, or do you want to maybe touch on that in case that person wants to get off?" Or
no, that's a great question. I'll answer that right now. Is one, you can just contact me directly. I don't know if I'm going to be the right person to work with you, but I'm happy to get you connected if I'm not the right person. Okay. I don't care whether people work with me or not. I want people to get the right connection that they need. So my number is right there on the screen, marriageenvy.com. I'm not trying to plug myself whenever I do workshops like this. I just want to share information. I'm not trying to build business. But I just want to let people know that I'm a resource to help get connected with. Other options are certainly I work with a lot of bishops who help support their members in counseling. So you can certainly talk with your bishop. Some people go through LDS Family Services. Some people go through a private practitioner like me. Some people will go through like the Community Mental Health Agency, Wasatch Mental Health. There are lots of other private agencies. There are online counselors who do counseling just through text, through different apps and whatnot. But anyway, there's so many different places to go. I would certainly just feel free. If it's a small enough group that I'm not going to get overrun by messages. Feel free to call or text me at that number. And like I said, I'm not trying to drum up business. If I can help you get connected with the right person, I'll put you in touch with somebody. Okay. So thanks for asking that question. Another thing, as far as skills and mindsets and strategies, consider the source. This is an important thing. A lot of times people are getting bad information from multiple sources, whether it's about the current pandemic that's going on, or whether it's about depression or anxiety or about relationships or whatever else. Everyone's got an opinion. One thing I can promise you about me is I do not care about your opinion, but I'm completely fair. I don't care about my opinion. I only care about what the research says. I care about actual information. And so I'm never going to just give somebody my opinion if I can't back it up with solid research and data and evidence, okay? So when it comes to this stuff, the stress that people are feeling right now around the pandemic and what's going on, please stick to the least biased media sources. You can look up least biased media outlets. Google it. You'll see a wonderful chart of showing the most biased and least biased. You just want good information. Go to the CDC website, the Center for Disease Control. I don't like to listen to a lot of politicians one way or the other, right? Everyone's got an agenda. I want to hear what the actual scientists who are dealing with this. You know, Dr. Fauci, who's that you hear of the most, he was working back in the 80s when the AIDS epidemic first came on. This guy's been in the game forever. Listen to people like that, okay? Don't listen to whatever political pundit is saying this, that, or the other, okay? Please avoid forwarding unsourced items, politically slanted links, fear-mongering, and reactive memes. It's not helping anybody. Check your sources, fact-check sites if you hear something that worries you. Don't spend a lot of time feeding bad information, okay? This is one I would love for you guys to go check out. It's a wonderful TED Talk by Steven Pinker. He's a psychologist that's been in the game for a long time. It's called, "Is the World Getting Better or Worse? A Look at the Numbers." I won't go into all of that. It can explain itself. But most people, when they're living with whatever their problems are right now, we think they're pretty terrible. And the problems we have are legitimate problems, okay? But he's going through a 30-year retrospective of the data back in 1988 from 28 up till 2018. And every measure of life, health, sustenance, prosperity, peace, freedom, safety, knowledge, leisure, and happiness, every single one of those has improved and gotten better in the past 30 years. That's the actual facts of the data, not our feelings that this is the worst things have ever been. So you have to watch when we're dealing, not just with whatever's going on today, but in dealing with our mental health, we need to have intelligent thinking to balance our emotions. Okay, balance and perspective can be really helpful and really important. If you go to my website here, where it says marriageenvy.com/depression, marriageenvy.com/depression, you can get these 2 slide packets and some other information on depression and mastering stress. That has a lot of information from 2 presentations that I do, which are much longer, in-depth versions of what we're talking about tonight, with a lot of other skills that we're not even going to cover tonight. When it comes to depression and anxiety, guys, the research is really clear. The most effective treatment for depression and or anxiety is therapy and medication. And like I said, the biggest barrier to getting either one of those is people's stigma around that. People always ask, well, should I do medication or therapy? They might be closed to one and open to the other one. If I had my choice, I would say generally do both. Now, there are some types of depressions, anxiety, where they respond really well to the therapy and they don't need the medication as much or at all, or vice versa. But it's not medication or therapy. The research shows that it's medication and therapy. And one way to think about it is the 4-legged stool, where the medication addresses the biochemical stuff. Remember, this is a physical illness. Diabetes is a biochemical imbalance. Okay? And if you're insulin dependent, there's no stigma around taking insulin, is there? Oh my gosh, I can't believe you take insulin. Why don't you just snap out of it? Just buck up, quit being so weak, or you're going to get dependent on that. Well, of course, someone who has diabetes is dependent on insulin. How's that a bad thing, right? If it's saving their life and making them function so they can have a life, right? That's not dependency in a bad way, right? And most people who get on medication really aren't dependent. These aren't dependency creating chemicals, but they are valuable ones that can help. We are chemical beings, okay? I wish I could go into the full science right now of how medication works in the brain, but the thing you need to know is that it doesn't make you happy. We call them happy pills. It doesn't make you happy. It helps your body use its own chemicals. Like Prozac, for example, the most common one that most people are familiar with. It doesn't make you happy. It allows your brain's own serotonin, which is the happiness chemical. If you're depressed, it's because you don't have enough serotonin. Prozac doesn't give you any serotonin. It allows your brain to release more of its own natural serotonin so it gets to the correct base level that it's supposed to be at. So anyway, so medication helps with the biochemistry. Therapy helps with emotion management skills. Therapy helps with thinking skills. And therapy helps with relationship skills. Medication can't teach those things. But medication can help ease some of the emotional stress and burden so that the skills you're learning can help you get up to the level you need. And of course, medication also helps with emotion management. So having these 4 legs of the stool gives us a lot of stability. Okay. So I'll encourage you to keep that in mind. One thing I guess I'll say is, I think I've got a few more slides, but I think I'll just end with the optimism and versus pessimism one. This is an important one because this is something that you can do. It's something you can work on. You hear people oftentimes talk about pessimists being, well, yeah, I'm a pessimist, but I'm really a realist, which kind of implies that optimists, it's a nice positive way of thinking, but it's not really an effective way of thinking. It's not reality, right? Well, The truth is both optimists and pessimists are both realists. And the research shows that pessimists, when it comes to, let's pick whatever problem is at hand, pessimists are much better at describing the full nature of the problem. They're better problem describers, and that can be helpful, right, when we're dealing with a problem. Optimists, however, the research shows, are actually more effective and better at solving the problem. So I always ask people, would you rather be a better problem describer or a better problem solver? And so the truth is, they're all realists. You go back and watch that Steven Pinker TED Talk that I mentioned. He makes a point in there that all the things that have gotten better over the last 30 years, in every single one of those measures, they've gotten better. And he'll show you the graphs and the data and all that. It's very fascinating. Every single one of them got better because of optimists. Scientists and engineers and doctors and researchers and policymakers were looking very realistically at the problem. And they made an assumption, an optimistic assumption, that we can fix this, we can make this better. And they got to work at it. Optimists, if anything, are more realistic because they actually not only deal with the reality, they change the reality for the better. So the nice thing about optimism is that you don't have to be naturally optimistic. You can learn optimism. There's some great books. One book called Learned Optimism. Emotional Intelligence is a great thing to learn. The Science of Happiness. These are some great books. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go with one more. This is kind of, well, I guess this isn't another slide. This is just related to the optimism. This is a picture of in my shop. Okay, I am, besides being a marriage and family therapist, I fix things, I make things. And I do woodworking, I do mechanics. I've got 3 vintage cool Volkswagens, an old hippie bus. Some of you may know the chalk bus, if you've seen that around. That's ours. I restored a beautiful 1972 yellow Carmen Ghia Volkswagen for my wife's little sports car thing as a secret surprise for her 50th birthday. I worked on it in private for 6 months. I never lied to my wife like that before. For 6 months, she didn't know what I was doing. I'm usually not a fan of lying to my wife, but I think that was a good exception. Anyway, so I like to fix and make things. And the whole point of this is that you need tools to do that. And I have this picture this picture is from my shop. I just took it today in preparation for our presentation tonight. And on this shelf of all these old chisels, these old antique chisels, I wrote some writings on there on the edge of that shelf. And the first one says, there is always a solution. That is probably one of my life mottos. That optimistic view is that whether I'm fixing restoring an old vintage vehicle or fixing a plumbing problem in the house or making something that I've never made before, there's always a solution. There's always a way to fix it. Or whether I'm helping a marriage that is broken, someone's heart who is distraught in the depths of anxiety or depression, there's always a solution. And the secret that I know, that I want my clients to know, what I want you people to know, is that there's always a solution, even especially when it looks like there isn't one. So when you're stuck in your loneliness or your despair or your frustrations or your stress, just because you can't see the solution does not mean it doesn't exist. And that's why sometimes it's helpful to use someone. If you're stuck in your problem, that's okay. Go find someone who's a master at unsticking problems, right? So even though I'm really good at restoring these old vintage vehicles, I can't fix them all the time. And I have to take them to my master, which is our master mechanic, who works on these old vintage Volkswagens, and he can help unstick any problem that I can't figure out. So one, there's always a solution. And if you'll notice how many tools I have there, the other saying that I have on there is that every problem has multiple solutions. A lot of times people come to me with whatever their problems are and they're stuck. They'll tell me, Jonathan, I've tried everything. And I'll say, I have no doubt that you've tried everything. And I'm so sorry it's been so hard. But the good news is, I promise you, you have not tried everything that I know. And if I can't help you figure it out, no problem, because I haven't tried everything that 50 of my brilliant colleagues have tried. There's no shortage of tools. I refer to my office, my therapy office, as Home Depot. There's so many tools here, you don't need to buy all of them. But you have a problem to fix, we're going to fix it. There's Always a solution, and every problem has multiple solutions. And that optimistic attitude in real life has solved so many problems in people's lives. And so if you're stuck, it's okay. It's okay. If you can't get unstuck, it's okay. Let someone help you. You don't need to do this on your own. Okay. I guess this is the last slide. We'll just end here. Faith versus fear. If you are prepared, you shall not fear. Go to the core of your faith, whether you're of our faith or someone else's faith or whatever your values and beliefs are. You may not be a religious person. That's okay. We need to believe in that things will get better. Faith is an optimistic view. Sometimes people think that faith is just not realistic. It's a very functional way of getting through life. Remember that God helps those who help themselves. It's easy to give in to fear. Go look in the back of the scriptures and look up fear. And you'll see how many times the phrase fear not or be ye not afraid shows up in the scriptures. It's a lot, hundreds of times, because it's the human condition to be fearful. It's okay if you're fearful. Whether it's faith that in God or faith that things will get better, they will. And if you don't know how to, don't do it alone. You guys can do this. Such a pleasure talking with all of you. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. This is a fun venue to do this in. It was a very different format for me to do, and I enjoyed getting to be here with you all. And thanks so much for having me. And I hope you have a good, wonderful pandemic experience as best you can. Stay safe, and be mindful, and be kind to yourself. Thank you.